Man, that sunset is gorgeous.
Grill, patio, sunset. Hard to get better than that. Unless you're browsing Carvana's inventory while you soak it all in.
Oh, burger time.
So sit back, get comfortable. Carvana's got thousands of cars under $20,000 just waiting for you.
I could stay here forever.
Carvana, where car buying meets comfort meets convenience. Download the app or visit Carvana.com today. That's not just the sound of that first sip of Morning Joe. It's the sound of someone shopping for a car on Carvana from the comfort of home.
That's a good blend.
It's time to take it easy, like answering some easy questions to get pre-qualified for a car in minutes.
Talk about starting the morning right.
Just like customizing your terms so your car fits your budget. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to experience car shopping the way it should be. Convenient, comfortable.
Hello to all the amazing Growth Mindset podcast listeners across the planet. Today is a very special episode because the Growth Mindset podcast is 1 year old. I've had so much fun putting together the podcast and now this episode summarizing the last year. And it's really an incredible episode that I can't wait to share with you guys. And before I do, I firstly have some recommendations. Firstly, if you love the Growth Mindset podcast, you should check out another great podcast called Next Year Now. So the Next Year Now show is all about uncovering everyday purposeful habits and practices to help you thrive at work and in life. So you can check it out and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And again, that's the Next Year Now podcast with Tom Hefner. I have a great recommendation for other business owners trying to advertise their business locally. So pay-per-click can quickly bleed you dry and review sites can scam you, but Scout Puppy Local has helped thousands of business owners easily become a trusted local merchant. Scout Puppy builds a one-page website hosted on their platform. The great thing about this is that they write all of the content. They add pictures, video, links to your own website and social media, and they fill it with really strong keywords so you get found. They submit the one-page website to over 200 search engines to help you compete with the big guys. And they'll write an industry-specific blog every 3 months. So basically, you get a one-page customer-acquiring revenue machine. It's pretty awesome. It starts from $89 a month with no contract. So go to scoutpuppy.com and click Add Business in the menu bar to sign up. And in their words, sit back and relax. Or on my advice, go and work on everything else in your business like a real entrepreneur. You can grab 50% off your first order if you sign up now online using Growth Mindset 50. It's your voucher code, and you can do that at scoutpuppy.com.
Hello and welcome. I'm Sam Harris, and it is my true honour and pleasure to host you here on the Growth Mindset podcast. I talk to amazing individuals about how they achieve their dreams and break down the strategies it takes to lead explosive tech businesses to being paid to travel the world. I deep dive into topics such as Bitcoin and FinTech, or just how to get stuff done, with the goal of increasing our own collective wisdom and making us all happier, healthier and wealthier. Who doesn't want that?
So, like I said, some huge news that the podcast is 1 year old today. So I'm taking a look back at the whole year and I'm playing some of my absolute favourite moments. It's a really insightful, a heartwarming, funny and at times scary episode as I trace back through my interviews with just such a great set of human beings. So I really didn't know what to expect when I started this podcast. I'd heard some advice that you should commit to trying to do at least 4 episodes just to see if you enjoy the process and can make a go of it and if podcasting is for you. Well, in the very first 10 minutes of my first episode that I recorded with an old friend, Tommy Aday, he told me the most incredible story that I'd had no clue about in his life, and I was just amazed that I'd known a friend for so long, and yet through podcasting I was just able to uncover such incredible insights about people. And it was this moment that I realised I was definitely going to enjoy being a podcaster, and I just made a really good choice in starting this and just resolved to carry on doing podcasting for maybe the rest of my life. I don't know, a long time. But anyway, this is a great clip, so I hope you enjoy it.
Wow, I do anything it takes.
Yeah.
I mean,
have you ever stolen anything?
Stolen? Wow. I mean, I can't even count how much I've stolen.
Oh my god.
Then again, I mean, I could tell you a wonderful story about this. I'll my view on life changed early on. So I left home when I was 8 years old. My mom cried, but my dad believed this was the way to bring up children. You just have to leave the house. But my mom thought, oh, it was too early. You can't let him leave. It's just 8 years old. So, but when I left, I went with a bunch of food stuff. So my mom packed me up. She gave me gari, which is cassava. It's not really popular here. She gave me provisions and stuff. So when I went on my own and I went to this camp, I started talking to people, of course, much older than I was. So they were much more experienced with life and living by themselves. So I gave them, I said, oh, welcome, this is me. My name is Tomiwa. I'm here in this camp. They said, oh, you're so young. I'm like, yeah, I know, but my dad wants this. So and so they still had a lot of food. So a lot of them came, oh, we share and we care in this camp. And can you give me some food? So I was like, of course. I gave cassavas. I gave things to people, provisions to people. And then it was time. After a week or two, my provisions ran out. And everybody just sort of forgot me. And I went back to these people to say, oh, it's all sharing and caring. I see you have a bunch of cassava grains. Can you give me some? And they were like, nope. And this was the same person I gave. Listen. So then I thought, okay, wow, great. Life is not as straightforward as it is. I thought if I give you something, you tend to help me out when I don't have as well. So it wasn't that way. Then I found someone to get in touch, send a letter to my mom. Back then it was just letters. There was no phones. Yeah. Send a letter to my mom. My mom rushed down as soon as she could with more food. So she also brought someone to get. I know. She also got someone to get this wood box that I can lock and put my provisions in. So she did that, and she had this space for me. She talked to the leader of the camp, and it was all good. I had food again. I was happy. The next morning, I woke up with my locker looking intact. Everything was good. I opened it, and there was nothing in there. Then I looked at the back. Through the back of the locker, they had removed the back and took everything, all my food stuff. And then the monster in me triggered. Yeah. I sort of just said, okay, I'm not going to call my mom. I'm going to fill up this. I'm going to repair this locker and I'm going to fill it up with food. Yeah. So I went on a shopping spree. And that was the first time I stole.
So I don't want to say that stealing is a good thing, but certainly hustling and looking after yourself is very important. In every episode, I've always been very fascinated in people's backgrounds and the initial entrepreneurial stories they have. This next clip is from Nick Miller, the CEO of BuzzHire, who also ran 3 different businesses for Rocket Internet. However, before he did all that, he started an olive oil importing business just after he graduated from university. This is just a really nice, compact story of some great lessons that everyone needs to learn as an entrepreneur.
So actually one of the entrepreneurial things that I did growing up was this olive oil business I forgot to mention, but basically I knew when I left uni that I wasn't ready to start working, and I didn't like the idea of just jumping into what everybody else was doing. I didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted to do. I had done an internship at a hedge fund the year before, but I didn't feel satisfied by the role. I was doing equity research and I felt like I was researching something and selling my analysis in order for people to buy stock. And that didn't really kind of gratify me. So I took a year out, and luckily my parents had just bought a house in Tuscany. They'd all left from London and bought a place in Tuscany, and they had some olive groves, but we were not doing anything with the olive oil. So I thought that was a cool project to kick off. So I basically spoke to the family and asked them we produced about 1,000 liters of oil. And in the meantime, I made the packaging. I bought the equipment that's needed to package it into bottles. I rented a van. I actually went over to Italy first, got a sample, brought it back to London, and went around to lots of delicatessens around London, showing them the sample and having them taste it and get orders in. I learned the difficulty of planning versus execution. I thought, okay, I'm going to give around 20 samples and I'll get orders for 1,000 liters. Instead, I got orders for like 20 liters of oil and I produced 1,000. So, but I rented this van, went over to Italy and spent pretty much a week bottling in a kind of a hut in Tuscany, 2,000 bottles, because each bottle was half a liter. Loaded it up in a van with a mate of mine who just came around for the ride. He also got paid in a few bottles of olive oil. And drove back. I also learned the impact of FX because I was buying the olive oil in euros and obviously selling it in pounds. And over the 6-7 months that I was working on this, the euro had strengthened massively versus the pound, making it so much more expensive to sell. And I also learned consignment. So at the beginning, I was really struggling. I had 20 liters sold in advance and I was trying to sell 980 liters and very few people agreed to buy it off me. And so I learned what was consignment. So I would drop off a box of 12 bottles and tell them that I'd be back in a month to see how many were sold. And all of a sudden I got my boxes in all the delis around London and all of a sudden they were starting to sell and I was starting to make money. And that way there was no risk from the seller's side. And I was actually starting to ship a lot of this oil and reducing my storage costs because something that I didn't kind of evaluate was the huge cost of storing 1,000 liters in London, in central London. It was a really fun experience. And that's actually why I decided to join Procter & Gamble in the end, because I was like, I need to be selling a product. I need to be dealing with something that's much more tangible than a piece of share price or something. So I did that over the period of about 7-8 months and then went traveling and then managed to sell pretty much 95% of everything that I took over.
I still love the imagery of Nick spending 2 weeks bottling olive oil under the sun in Italy and driving across Europe in a van to try and sell it all. It's amazing. But we aren't all lucky enough to just take a break out to start a business, and this next story is an example of being pushed into solving your own problems after life hands you a bunch of proverbial lemons.
And at the time I'd been working in a cafe for peanuts where they treated everyone like dirt, and I was very bored. I ended up getting just been fired from that job. And at the time I was quite down about it, and they explained, well, you didn't keep the toilet roll on the toilet and that was your responsibility. I couldn't maintain the most basic things in the most basic job. And at the time I'd convinced myself it was because I wasn't capable, which in retrospect it seems a bit ridiculous that I was not capable of keeping the toilet roll on the toilet. Now I'd say it's more a matter of whether it was stimulating enough. And I think sort of naturally my mind was more used to thinking of more complex things and it just bored me. And so, I was at the gym with a friend. I'd been working this job and he was on the phone to another friend that didn't want to do his homework for university. So the friend on the phone had the genius idea, well, Felix has finished his master's and he doesn't have a job. Why doesn't he do your homework? Oh, wonderful idea. So I went over to the other friend's house, had a look at his essay on political philosophy, which looked fascinating. And he had a nap on the couch for a few hours. And by the time he woke up, I'd almost finished. It was so interesting. And the really odd thing was, in contrast to doing your own homework, where you dick around for hours and be on Facebook and procrastinate, when it was someone else's for money, not only did I enjoy it, I did it really efficiently. I was concentrating, sitting up with a straight back the whole time, and his project was done, and he paid me $300, and he got a high distinction, and it was pretty win-win, and I really enjoyed it. And then I thought, well, we should get more of them. So then I started advertising on the internet, and that was going okay. I was sort of much better than the cafe job, but then I'd got projects in areas that were either too boring or I couldn't do, such as OH&S was too boring, and IT I didn't have a clue. So another friend in IT had the simple solution, of course, freelancer.com. And next minute, I was outsourcing all the papers, unless they were particularly interesting and I wanted to write an essay about something.
A really great example of hustling, although maybe it wasn't the most ethical long-term solution that he came up with. But I'm pleased to say that Felix has since changed his business and he now runs chess clubs across Melbourne, teaching and inspiring school kids to aspire to be chess grandmasters. It's a really cool business. This reminds me of another great story from the podcast about chess and the importance of learning and changing what you do with your life. This is going to be a bit of a theme in this episode, and of course it's central theme to the Growth Mindset podcast, where we learn how to do anything. I was very fortunate to record a conversation with Antoine Blondeau, who was the inventor of Siri and currently runs a multi-billion-dollar AI business called Sentient Technologies. When I asked him what his most important memory was, he told me a really deep, heartwarming and inspiring story about his grandfather, and of course chess.
My grandfather was a very smart person who got injured in the war, and he actually lost his eyesight. And he was a remarkable man in many ways, and he, an example to most of us. He actually, after being blind, he completed the engineering school that he was admitted to. He was the best one in France, actually. And he went to marry, had 5 kids, adopted 1, and then went to run his own company, which ironically, of course, was in the business of producing lights, light bulbs. Wow. There you go. So, and I used to play with him chess, and he's a blind man.
Yeah.
And he was playing chess. He was representing the chessboard in his head, and I played with him many times, and that told me something about, again, overcoming, but this time it's overcoming something that's totally unfair, but just through sheer will and also benevolence in this case. He was a benevolent guy. He was not trying to impress anything upon you, just trying to engage, but doing some remarkable things in the process. It was very cool.
Yeah, it's insane. Wow, thank you very much for sharing. Beautiful. Cool. Okay, and then what's your favorite parable?
So there's one big lesson that I learned along the way, and that is, do not focus on status. Do not focus on the money in the bank. And I discovered that, I guess, through trial and error. Maybe in this case, trial and not error. But and the interesting thing is that for most of my career, whenever I moved from jobs to jobs, that's almost always the case in every single thing that I've done. I moved to positions or jobs or companies that would pay me less than the job I was in before. But belief carries the day, right? So if you believe in it, and if you work your ass off, and if you have conviction, I think that's important. Then that turns into better. That turns into opportunities that you could never have dreamed about. And I think, to me, that's a big lesson. It's not about you have to make the ends meet. Okay, I think that is clear to most. But beyond that, what's really important is you do what you really believe in. If you have the skills to do that, if you're fortunate enough to be in a position where you can choose something you believe in, right? And in the developed world, at least some of us can choose this way. If you can choose that versus choose what's going to give you a bigger paycheck or a bigger name. Eventually, this is what's going to carry you and carry everybody else along the way.
Some really great advice about how to build the life you want and success. I'm sure you'll agree with that. I think it's really important to note that someone running $1 billion business got there by pursuing interests and passions rather than by pursuing money. So this is a perfect introduction to this next clip that I'm going to play, which is an example of pretty much the worst case scenario if you don't stick true to your ethics and you do get sucked into chasing money. So I recorded a conversation with a real life hitman. It was possibly one of the most mind-blowing hours of my life, and I don't think I've ever sweated more profusely in such a small amount of time. And I've been to like deserts and really hot saunas and stuff, but no comparison. Anyway, I'm going to play this clip, which is just a really tragic story of how this unnamed source unfortunately fell into his current role as being a hitman. So it really highlights Antoine's words of staying true to your morals and not chasing money.
How I got into it was a life or death situation. I was excited to deal on the dark web. The guy I trusted started stealing thousands of dollars. I had a choice, put a bullet in his head or I get one. After that moment, I couldn't go back. I was made into a hitman. If I didn't do a hit, they would pay the next guy a little more to hit me too.
Okay, so I guess you didn't ever expect to end up as a hitman. Would you say you're kind of unhappy as a hitman then?
I would not say that I'm unhappy.
Okay, well that's good, but it's not your preferred choice of work.
If someone put a gun to your head and told you to hit some stranger, and after you get $1,000.
Well, I'd feel a little shortchanged, but I guess first I would probably kill the person before thinking about the money.
Your life is better than a few extra zeros.
Yeah, true. So is that like the average hit price, or just they had you in a tight place and so they gave you $1,000?
Most of the hits go for around $1,000. There are at least 200 hitmen around.
Holy shit, that's like nothing. How is a human life so cheap? Like a funeral is more than
£1,000. A psychiatrist's bill is more than £1,000.
After one hit, you don't feel anything. You feel dead inside.
Ouch. So you felt that way since your first hit?
It was harder with him because I knew him. It haunts me. I still see his face every day.
Oh man. How come you were asked to hit him? Like, naturally I want to know everything about how this happened, but if it's uncomfortable to talk about, don't worry. Also, don't mention anything specific, of course.
So he started stealing money from some Indian drug lords. Our job was to transport drugs and get the cash. He started to steal the money. The drug lords found out and beat us up. He confessed, and when he did, one of the 6 other guys gave me a gun, and I was told to put one in between his eyes, or we both die. It was so they could make me scared and listen to them.
Wow. That's intense. I hope you don't feel responsible. He shouldn't have risked it. And of course, they shouldn't have wanted him killed. So it's not really your fault.
He even told me to pull the trigger. He looked me in the eyes and said, "We will both die if I don't." Those words and his face haunt me. But the other people I hit was easy. I don't know them.
Wow, the brain is weird. So are they still your employer or do you work freelance now?
I work for them still. It's good pay, I get to party hard, and if I leave, they will kill me. People get hit for cheating on partners. Hitman prices are about $1,000 to $10,000. There are over 400 hitmen.
Jeez, I thought hitmen would be paid like 100k to like $1 million and be flying on jets around the world with hidden identities. So I guess I was pretty wrong. Are all hits usually within the country that you're in?
High-profile people cost $50,000 to $100,000. I do it here.
Has anyone ever asked you to kill Donald Trump?
No.
Oh, I'm surprised. I know some friends who are convinced he'll be assassinated before his end of his first term. What do you think the price would be for him?
His suit is also bulletproof, and his tie. A price like that would be in the million.
Yeah, I figured. Okay, so don't disclose who or anything, but can you vaguely describe the most high-profile hit you've ever done?
Lawyers and judges.
Oh, shit. Yeah, messing with the law seems dangerous. Do you think you could do something like that sort of hit in a first world country like the US or Australia?
No, it would be a lot harder. But I do want to go to Australia, Gold Coast.
So that was possibly the best anti-drugs advert on the planet. So remember kids, drugs aren't smart. And yes, it turns out buying drugs does actually result in real people getting killed. And it isn't just stories that you hear in the movies. So I did feel really sad for the unnamed hitman, and he did go on to talk about his desires to change his role and run away, but his fear of being hunted and killed if he did. So this next clip is a story from another anonymous source, who was a hacker who did manage to turn his life around to escape his life of crime and start an ethical business using the skills he had learned from hacking into world banks and stealing Bitcoin, to now helping companies increase their online security.
Going on to cryptocurrencies, how did you hack and end up with cryptocurrencies?
So we would find out people who have cryptocurrencies, and we'd make sure that they don't know who we are.
Yeah.
We'd go with the Wi-Fi pineapple outside their house. Then we'd monitor their internet usage, and if they have a wallet that's online, we could pick up that website that they're going to, so we could clone that website, and then we'd kick them off their internet, route them through the Wi-Fi pineapple, and when they browse, for example, Coinbase.com, we can make that website route to our phishing. So they think they're on Coinbase, but they're on my phishing server. Then they log in. And you have their credentials. But most of the time they use two-factor authentication. So with that, we have to get their email as well.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask, how do people protect themselves?
Best thing to do is use two-factor authentication, because if someone has your wallet password and you don't have two-factor authentication, they can straight away break into it. If you use two-factor authentication, it either sends a text to your phone or an email.
So if you're so it's unlikely that you'd ever be able to find like a Bitcoin whale or something just because they'd be too protected.
A lot of the time they don't know what they're doing. They just think it's a new phase, invest a lot of money into Bitcoin. And like the guy with the brain tumor saw that ransomware too. He's now gotten to a lot of Bitcoin accounts from that ransomware. I've coded ransomware into a USB stick that acts as a keyboard. I sold that to a guy with a brain tumor up in New Plymouth. The only reason I sold it to him was he has a family. And he wants to leave a bit of money. So I was like, fuck it, I can sell you some ransomware.
That's kind of like Robin Hood, I guess.
It was crazy. So a day after I sold it to him, I looked on the news, stuff.co.nz. You can have a look at he launched on a taxi company. So taxi service got hit with the ransomware I programmed.
Wow, that's cool. What was the name of that website?
Stuff.co.nz.
Stuff.
Stuff.
.co.nz.
So if you Google stuff taxi hack, it'll come up.
That was stuff, not stuff.
Yeah, STUFF.
Cool. Okay, I'll do that. All right. So now going forwards, what are you doing? So you say you now run a ethical hacking business.
Yeah. So since my friend got arrested for hacking the police, I thought, the next one could be me if I do one little mistake. And it's the thing about hacking is it's not hard to hack. It's more hard to staying anonymous and staying hidden.
Yeah.
So you could just have one small slip up, or for example, you could be taking down a website, and if your VPN disconnects and you're still launching an attack, they've got your IP address.
Yeah.
So anything could happen, and then you could get sent to jail.
Sure.
So I started thinking, I still love hacking, like I'm really good at it, so why don't I try and use it for something good? So I started a company called So what we do is we audit companies and we hack them like a black hat hacker. So we do anything we can to gain access to their servers, their computers, or their website. And if we do, we tell them how we're able to access it and how they can stay secure.
Cool. So it's great to see that this hacker has moved towards a more ethical way of making money, and also to find out how to secure my Bitcoin. But I do really think there's a lot of benefit in having a policy of working out how you can help people first, and that if you behave altruistically, it'll actually benefit you in the long run. So just from the basics of being a salesman, if you have the viewpoint of how can I help my customer rather than how can I get money out of them, it'll just pay you so much more dividends, and you'll just have really good relationships with your customers. But also, I think this holds true in all walks of life. So I've really enjoyed asking people about some of the kindest experiences they've benefited from and how it's changed their mindset. I spoke with Free Trade, a new fintech startup creating a free trading platform for UK investors. This next clip is from Victor This next clip is from Victor, whose surname has some strange letters in it, and I'm sure it sounds really good when said out loud, but sadly not today. Anyway, this next clip is from Victor, their head of growth, who gave a great example of someone behaving altruistically towards him at their own potential loss, and how it's changed his view on working with others.
So I spent a long time at Google, 7 years in total. I worked under various managers and directors, and in total, maybe I worked with a couple of hundred people in total. So there have been plenty of occasions there when I experienced kindness. Probably one of the kindest things from that perspective was I had this director I was reporting to, and I was still relatively new at the company, and I had my ideas in terms of, I want a career, I want to stay at Google, I want to progress. I had a discussion with this guy, and basically what he told me was that if it comes to your career, you have to be egoistic, but also you have to be mindful that it's your 20s and 30s when you can make the biggest progress in your career, and it sort of flattens out. And basically what this guy was saying is that in order to progress, you kind of have to leave my team. And if you think about that, a manager, somebody who manages a department or like a big team, there's a temptation to be egoistic there in terms of, I just want to keep the best people. But basically what this guy said was that you should look at other roles. You should explore, and you should try to change jobs inside Google or outside even, and sort of progress your way ahead while you are still, 26. And that really set me up. I changed jobs about every 2 years from that point on, and always sort of stepping up in career. And I think it really helped me to sort of build up my experience and my profile even. Arguably self-inflicted damage. I left his team probably in 2 months. That was a really impactful conversation. But I really considered that a kind thing, because what I really had in mind was my progress and my career, as opposed to his operational efficiency or whatever sort of KPIs he would have that I would contribute to. So I think some of the kindest things are when it's not in your interest to help someone, but you still help anyway. Probably it's really hard to explain why someone would do that. Yeah, it's just really, humans are really complex, right? Mm. And sometimes it's not in your very direct interest. You could just manipulate the person, right? But sometimes, hopefully very often, you just want to do the right thing. You want to help the person, but there is no immediate direct benefit you get from it. But you just take, I guess, pleasure and satisfaction from seeing the other person succeed with your help or support, paying that forward. So from that point on, whenever I had somebody really, and Google is full of bright people, of course, but whenever I had somebody especially bright on my team, I always encourage them to seek out challenges and opportunities and try to move forward, kind of gather experience, progress inside or outside of the company, whichever made sense. So that was a really kind thing that I did not really understand, only in retrospect, that was an act of kindness.
I really believe there is something to be said for transparently having someone else's goals before your own. And this came up a lot across my conversations with various great CEOs about how they treat their staff. Sadly, I can't play all of those clips today, but I can play this brief clip from Dean Hume, the author of Hiring Startup Teams. He summarises this point nicely.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a boss was, we're still friends to this day actually, he said, make sure whatever you do, you keep on paying things forward. When someone, so for example, if your boss helps you out and gives you a leg up, make sure you're helping bring someone along the journey with you. Make sure you're always helping them out too. So it's not just like a take. It's a bit of a give in everything in life. And I think, it sounds kind of cheesy, but I think the more you give out, the more things come back to you in life.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good piece of advice. And so who's your hero?
My hero? That's a tough question. Yeah. I was thinking long and hard about this, and I think for me it'll probably have to be my dad. He when I was a youngster, he passed away when I was about 15. But he was a cool guy. He in some sort of weird way, I always you always remember the good stuff, and I always remember the good things he did. And I remember, I had his own business, and he, liked to look after people, and I kind of try and bring a bit of those traits along with me. Who knows?
Some sterling advice, and also amazingly poignant, because at the time of the interview, Dean was the CTO of Settled, a property tech startup in London. But now, I am very, very pleased to announce that he has taken some time out from work due to becoming a dad. Dean is such a great guy, and I've no doubt he's going to be an awesome dad, just like his own father. This leads into a funny story from my guest Ben Marshall, a vegan bodybuilder, model and videographer. He had a much less fortunate childhood experience, with his own mother coming to save him.
One of the earliest memories I've got is I was probably about 3 years old, and I was playing outside. I fell over and I cracked my teeth, and I knocked out my front tooth. And I think the reason it sticks with me is because it stayed with me to this day, is so I looked at my front tooth and I was really upset, and I grabbed it and I ran inside. My mum, being the fantastic woman she was, didn't take me to the hospital or anything. She just sat me down and shoved it back in.
What?
But the root, obviously, the gum healed. Yeah. But the root was ripped out. So I had this black front tooth. Wow. And then my other front tooth came through next to it. I'm pushing, so I had like 3 front teeth. So when I was younger, it was the most awful look ever. And then I had really bad milk teeth as well. I had to get dentists every week to get them removed. But then when my adult teeth came through, I never had a brace or anything. They just lined up perfectly. Yeah, it was really good. But because of what happened, I was so anal about it. I would brush my teeth religiously 8 times a day. Like all through high school. 8 times? Like at least. Like as soon as I woke up, after breakfast, after lunch. I think that's unhealthy, Yeah, I would brush them till they bled. I would brush my teeth so much. Wow. All through high school, I had a toothbrush in my bag.
That's really bad for you.
It really is.
I think this is an amazing demonstration of the way experiences can have such a profound effect on us. And also, it's just amazing that his mother literally shoved his dead tooth back into his mouth. So, like Ben says, she is really a hero. But on the subject of heroes, I think we can all be heroes with much smaller commitments than full-time parenthood. This clip on the kindest thing done for him is from Rob Price, a teacher and author, who recollects one of his darkest moments and how someone saved him with a simple act of kindness.
It's the day I became homeless. My boss gave me a place to sleep. That was extraordinary. I was in a very bad situation and I had to get out of the place where I was living. And I told my boss, and she told me to go upstairs at the place I was working, which was a children's centre, and there was a little room upstairs with a small kitchen and a sofa that the staff used for breaks. And she said, you should go out there and you should sleep here as long as you want, which at that time, for various reasons, I wouldn't have had anywhere else to go. And I remember very, very, very vividly being upstairs in this little break room and making beans on toast and being incredibly happy.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, I was free of this god-awful situation I'd been in domestically. And second of all, because this was a moment that was like authentically mine and that had been given to me without any expectation of return or reward or anything. Someone had just given this sofa and this pot of beans in this kitchen to me and just said, yeah, just stay as long as you want. I ended up staying one night, was all I needed. Sometimes you just need...
Yeah, you need like time to just work out your situation. And
I didn't even need time. I just needed to be welcome somewhere.
Yeah.
Which I was. Thanks.
Cool.
Thanks, Rosie.
Yeah, have you told her that ever?
Oh, she knows. She knows. She's very wise. We understand each other great. We talk on Facebook now.
Yeah?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, like all people.
Like everyone does.
It's amazing how sometimes even the simple act of just giving something without expectation of anything back can so massively change someone's situation. After my experiences travelling, I can really relate to Rob's feeling when you just need to have a moment that is yours and yours alone, where you don't need to worry about owing anyone something for the privilege and you can just feel settled for a second to just actually work out what the hell you need to do with your life. This next guest, Bob Asim, helped me out when I was feeling this way, and he opened up his entire home to me in Malaysia whilst I was travelling, after I had only met him once before. He even let me drive his car, which seemed like almost a step too far in terms of kindness, and it was a real demonstration of how I want to behave as a human being. So I learned a lot from my time with Bob, and I was really privileged to record a podcast with him before I left. He gave me so much good advice in that episode that has really helped me since. But with only one clip to play, I went with this clip where he explains his attitude towards giving to others.
I also realized that giving is like a privilege for two reasons. Number one, you can only give what you have, right? So if you can give somebody something, that means you're more privileged than somebody, right? And that could mean even a smile. Like sometimes you see some people like they have a bad day. They can't even smile, but you can smile. And you give him a smile and you make his day, and then, that's why you're more privileged than him, right? And the second reason why it is a privilege is you can only give when the other party is willing to receive, The world has become so, so crazy that whenever someone is nice to you, you think that, okay, maybe this guy...
I want something else.
An
agenda.
So, but if someone just, okay, thank you, it's a privilege because they allowed you to give. That's my thinking.
Cool, it's a really nice outlook on it.
And it makes you feel so much more grateful in life because you realize that you actually have a lot to give. You are in a better position than a lot of people because you're able to give. Even a smile is a gift, because you're happy.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good point, isn't it? Just going around like your normal life just definitely makes you happier just choosing to be happy in the moment, if you get me. As in, when something comes your way that could make you unhappy and you go, I'm not going to let this make me be unhappy.
Yeah.
You feel extra happy just because you decided that. Like, I remember when I was sort of 17 or 18, like I got a parking ticket this one day and it pissed me off and like I felt like I'd been done wrong because I parked there for like 5 minutes and it's super annoying. And like, I lost like 100 quid or whatever. And it wasn't like the end of the world, but it ruined the rest of my day.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day, my friend was like, oh, you can park here because he lived in the city and I didn't know it. And I was like, okay, cool. And so we went for lunch, came back and I had another parking ticket. And I was like, oh, fucking hell. So it was mostly his fault, but then I was like, okay, well, I should have listened to him. It's my car. And just because I had such a bad day yesterday, I just couldn't be asked with having another bad day. And I just chose, you know what? I just don't care about this. This is fine. I'm going to have a good day the rest of the day. I'm not going to be able to see my friend otherwise. But I then had like a much better day just because I'd chosen to not be pissed off. I was like extra happy than I felt like even more sort of like in the moment and like happy that I wasn't unhappy
exactly
the whole time.
I think that is a good point. Like for me, shit's always happened.
Yeah.
And when it happens, I just say, okay, I learned it. The next time I won't do this again. And in fact, I will tell myself, I'm so happy that I learned the new things today.
Yeah.
And it's not going to repeat. So then you just move on with your life. And you, like what you say, you'll be happier.
Yeah. If you ever watch Kung Fu Panda, there's like the phrase that his master teaches him, like, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift. That's why we call it the present.
Yeah.
You ruined the punchline there.
Sorry.
It's a good quote though, and
it
just means like just value what you have right now and don't worry so much.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Then I'm gonna share you a quote. Dalai Lama, when asked what surprised him the most about humanity, he answered, man, because he sacrifices his health in order to make money, then he sacrifices his money to recuperate his health, and then he is so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present, the result being that he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he's never going to die, and then dies having never really lived.
Oh, wow.
That's very powerful. Like,
yeah,
he's a wise guy.
Super wise. Such a good quote. Both the Dalai Lama and Bob are true legends in my mind. And with that closing note, I can't think of a better way to end the episode. It's been an amazing year putting together these podcasts for you all, and trying to select the best bits was a monumental but also a hugely entertaining experience. There's been so many great interviews and moments that I wanted to put into this episode, from my time in North Korea to learning about crazy tech innovations that are going to change the world around us. But if there's one thing that I learnt this year, it's that keeping things shorter and focused is really important. And I think this episode really summed up a story that I wanted to tell you guys, and hopefully it's had an effect on the way that you do things. So I'm now going to take some time to reflect and really define a direction and goals for the podcast going forwards. You can be sure the content is only going to get better. On the theme of kindness, if you enjoyed this episode, please do give me a sweet-ass rating on iTunes or your preferred player. And share this episode with a friend or all of your friends. And I'd really, really love to talk to you if you have any ideas of what you like or dislike about the podcast and what you think I should be focusing on for year 2. And on that note, I would just love to thank everyone that's been on the show, everyone that ever listened to the show, and I just hope you all keep learning and keep growing. If someone as incapable of speaking as I was a year ago can start a podcast, then I'm sure that you can do absolutely anything.
You've listened to an episode of the Growth Mindset podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe on your preferred app and give me a good rating. If you are unable to give good feedback right now, try sharing the show with a friend who will. Or just wait for the show to improve. If you have any ideas for the show or you just want to reach out, I'd love to talk to you. On Twitter, I am at Sam Harris Tweets, or Instagram, SamJamSnaps.
Show notes, along with links to everything that we discuss, are available at growthmindsetpodcast.com, along with information on how to get involved and blog posts on cool things that you should be aware of.
Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy your next podcast.